Flashbulbs explode like fireworks across the crimson carpet. Nicole Kidman stands poised, a masterpiece of calm in a storm of noise. Diamonds flashing, lips curved into that famously unreadable smile. "Nicole, Nicole, is it true?" reporters shout, their voices slicing through the Hollywood night. For a moment, she doesn't answer. The cameras click faster. The silence stretches, heavy, almost defiant. Behind that composed face, a secret waiting to shatter everything the world thought it knew. For years, they'd been the golden couple, the image of devotion and artistry. Country music charm meets cinematic grace. They laughed in interviews, clung to each other on red carpets, sold the illusion of forever. But illusions crack. Tonight, the perfection flickers. Her eyes betray something the tabloids could never capture: exhaustion, truth, and the quiet rage of someone finally done pretending. Then she speaks, calm, steady, unstoppable. For years, everyone thought our love was untouchable, but sometimes the truth is the only way to start again. The crowd falls silent. Headlines are about to erupt. What she revealed next didn't just end a marriage. It changed how Hollywood talks about love. They were Hollywood's crown jewels, the couple who made love look effortless. Award shows turned into love stories. Every shared glance, every playful laugh on the red carpet became a meme of perfection. When Keith sang, his lyrics carried her name. When Nicole won, her speeches glowed with gratitude. Together they built a brand, not just a marriage, but a myth. The cameras captured everything the world wanted to believe. The mansion glowing like a fairy tale castle, the laughter echoing across late-night interviews, the photos of family picnics that looked airbrushed by destiny itself. They were living proof that fame could coexist with forever. But behind the glitter, small cracks began to form. A rehearsed smile that lingered too long. A hand that didn't reach back. The tabloids whispered, dismissed at first as just another rumor. Yet those whispers grew louder, feeding off every awkward glance, every absence from a premiere. And audiences didn't just watch, they invested. People wanted this love to be real, because if they could make it work, maybe anyone could. That's why it mattered. But beneath the surface, something far more complicated and far darker was taking shape. Something Nicole would one day expose. Keith Urban's story began like a country song. Dirt roads, small-town stages, a guitar that never left his hands. He came from modest roots, chasing melodies through smoky bars and neon lights until Nashville finally noticed. His charm was effortless, his grin disarming. Fans saw a man who'd climbed from nothing to everything, and they loved him for it. Success suited him. Awards piled up, interviews painted him as the wholesome rebel, the tattooed romantic who wrote ballads about devotion. Behind the microphone, he was electric. Behind the camera, he was polished. The industry called him authentic. But fame has a way of polishing imperfections until the truth becomes inconvenient. The first cracks came quietly. Whispers of wild nights and blurred mornings. Stories buried by management, softened by PR spin. Addiction was framed as struggle. Struggle as redemption. Each relapse was packaged as resilience. To the public, he was fighting demons. To those closest to him, the demons were fighting back. He was magnetic, but mercurial. Warmth one moment, icy silence the next. What looked like passion could turn into control, affection into strategy. He could disarm a critic with a smile and silence a partner with a word. And yet his fame insulated him. The stage lights blinded everyone, including himself. When your image becomes your armor, you forget what it's protecting. So the world kept applauding, mistaking charisma for character, the song for sincerity. Nicole did too, for a while. But behind her quiet gaze, she was learning, observing patterns, storing every word, every performance, every contradiction. Because for all his charm, for all his careful control, he never saw the one thing Nicole was quietly planning. Long before the headlines, before the diamonds and the Hollywood myth, there was a girl from Sydney with a dream too big for her own quiet voice. Nicole Kidman grew up shy but observant, a child who found her confidence in make-believe. Acting wasn't just ambition, it was escape, a way to turn vulnerability into art. While other kids played outside, she was memorizing lines, imagining worlds where she could finally be seen. Her rise was meteoric, but costly. From early fame came the heavy weight of perfection. Every role demanded transformation, every interview demanded poise. The tabloids called her elegant, but few saw the exhaustion behind the composure, the endless pressure to be flawless, gracious, unbreakable. Beneath the gowns and red carpets was someone who had learned to survive by smiling through pain. She had known heartbreak before Keith. Every wound taught her something new about control, silence, and resilience. So when love returned, radiant, public, overwhelming, she gave it everything. Marriage, children, career, she juggled them all with the precision of someone who could not afford to drop a single piece. To the world, she was the perfect wife and mother. To herself, she was still searching for peace. But peace doesn't always come wrapped in applause. It comes in the quiet moments, the long flights, the late-night journaling, the hours spent in therapy learning that strength isn't silence. Slowly, she began to see the difference between grace and submission, between love and performance. Nicole learned to observe instead of react, to gather her thoughts like evidence. Every smile became a choice, every silence a statement. She realized that stillness could be her sharpest weapon, not out of revenge, but clarity. So when the cracks in her marriage widened, she didn't shout. She watched. She listened. She waited. And behind the calm eyes that once only reflected pain, a new kind of power began to emerge, one built not on appearances, but on truth. Because one day, she knew the moment would come to speak, and when she finally decided to speak, the world would listen. The fairy tale began to flicker, not with a crash, but with whispers. A clipped answer in an interview, a strained smile on the red carpet, a momentary flinch caught by paparazzi lenses. Suddenly, every look, every lyric, every silence became evidence. Keith released a song that fans swore carried a hidden message, a confession wrapped in melody. Nicole, meanwhile, appeared radiant, yet distant, as though she were there and somewhere else entirely. Journalists dissected every public outing, magnifying the space between their joined hands. The narrative shifted from perfect couple to something's off. Then came the leaks. Anonymous sources, cryptic quotes, tense moments replayed on talk shows. The media didn't just report the cracks, they widened them. The story had escaped them both, growing its own momentum, feeding off speculation. And through it all, Nicole said nothing. Not a denial, not a confirmation, just silence. Deliberate, unnerving, powerful. Her silence became the story. Fans began to wonder if she was protecting him or preparing something. Then came the breaking point, a night of public embarrassment, a moment that crossed from private pain into global spectacle. Something in her expression changed, a quiet decision, final and absolute. She smiled for the cameras one last time, that same famous composure, now a mask, with an expiration date. because the truth was no longer a secret. It was a storm gathering behind her eyes. The night before she spoke out, even her closest friends didn't know what was coming. It happened on an ordinary afternoon that suddenly became anything but. The cameras were set, the lights carefully diffused, and the world tuned in expecting the usual: a polite interview, a few movie plugs, maybe a vague comment about new beginnings. What they got instead was a masterclass in control. Nicole Kidman walked onto that stage alone. No publicist, no entourage, no ring. Just the quiet power of someone who had made peace with the truth. The studio audience applauded, unaware they were seconds away from witnessing a cultural moment. She smiled, that same poised to practice smile that had carried her through years of scrutiny, but this time there was something different in it. Stillness. Certainty. The host tried to ease into small talk, but Nicole's eyes didn't waver. She wasn't here to play along. "I think," she began softly, her voice steady but cutting through the air like a blade, "that sometimes the most dangerous illusions are the ones we agree to live inside." The room stilled. Cameras zoomed in. She spoke slowly, deliberately, not gossiping, not attacking, but exposing the quiet truth of emotional neglect. She talked about how fame can make people believe they're invincible, how love becomes performance when one person's pain becomes another's publicity. She described the loneliness of being adored in public, but unheard in private. "There's a difference between being loved and being seen. For years, I thought I had both. I didn't." Gasps rippled through the audience. The host shifted nervously, realizing this wasn't a press junket, it was a reckoning. Nicole never named names. She didn't have to. Every word painted a portrait that was unmistakable, yet dignified. No rage, no revenge, just revelation. She spoke of her own healing, the therapy sessions, the journaling, the silence that once felt suffocating but later became her sanctuary. "You learn," she said, "that silence isn't weakness. Sometimes it's preparation." Her words were calm, almost whispered, but they carried the force of a lifetime. Every pause, every glance to the audience pulled them closer. You could hear the collective heartbeat of a world realizing it was watching someone reclaim their story. She smiled again, smaller now, truer. "I used to think I needed to protect someone else's image, but I realized the only thing worth protecting was my peace." A murmur of awe passed through the crowd. It wasn't scandal, it was liberation. Nicole Kidman had done something rare in a culture built on spectacle. She'd turned vulnerability into power. Within minutes, social media lit up. Clips of the moment flooded timelines. Nicole Kidman's quiet takedown, a masterclass in grace. Feminist commentators called it the speech of the decade. Fans tweeted, "She didn't expose him, she freed herself." A viral thread declared, "Nicole Kidman just redefined revenge. It's peace." Reaction videos appeared overnight. People crying, cheering, replaying the clip like a mantra. Memes contrasted her composure with his silence. Talk shows replayed her quotes in slow motion. The media, once obsessed with the breakup, now obsessed over her rebirth. And through it all, Nicole stayed silent again. Not to hide, but to let the truth breathe. She'd said what she came to say, and that was enough. In that single appearance, she dismantled years of illusion without raising her voice. She didn't need to. The truth spoke louder. The applause came slowly at first, hesitant, stunned, then swelled into a standing ovation that felt like release. Viewers at home wiped tears, not out of pity, but admiration. It was as if the entire world had been holding its breath and she'd just given it permission to exhale. And when the camera panned in for one last close-up, her expression said everything words couldn't. Calm, complete, untouchable. She nodded once, not to the host, not to the audience, but to herself. And then the internet erupted. The moment Nicole's words hit the airwaves, the world lit up like a storm. Within hours, hashtags began trending across every platform. Hashtag Nicole Speaks, hashtag Truth Over Fame, hashtag Grace in Silence. Clips from the interview spread like wildfire, stitched into reaction videos and quoted on morning talk shows. The internet had chosen its side, and this time it wasn't chasing scandal, it was celebrating strength. Hollywood took notice. Fellow actors posted messages of quiet solidarity. This is what dignity looks like. Journalists called it the end of the celebrity fairy tale. Opinion writers dissected every line, some calling her courageous, others accusing her of calculated timing. But even among the skeptics, there was no denying the shift. The narrative had moved from heartbreak to empowerment. Keith Urban, meanwhile, faced a very different spotlight. His first reaction was denial, a brief statement about respect and private matters. But the tone didn't land. Reporters noted his hesitation, the awkward deflections in interviews. His once charmed confidence seemed cracked, his songs suddenly reinterpreted through a harsher lens. The man who had once mastered public control now looked unsure of the script. While the world dissected him, Nicole quietly rebuilt. No public statements, no rebuttals, just presence. She was seen at charity galas advocating for women's mental health, joining yoga retreats, producing art that explored resilience. Each appearance carried the quiet authority of someone who had stepped beyond the noise. The ripple effects reached far beyond Hollywood. Fans began re-evaluating their own relationships, sharing stories of emotional neglect and recovery. Podcasts, forums, and essays buzzed with one theme: you can walk away with outrage and still win. Nicole's calm had become contagious. But as the headlines swirled and the applause echoed, there was one thing the world didn't yet know. Nicole wasn't finished. Because her final message, the one she had saved for last, would turn personal pain into a global lesson. And when she delivered it, even her critics would have no choice but to listen. The moment Nicole's words hit the airwaves, the world lit up like a storm. Within hours, hashtags began trending across every platform. Hashtag Nicole Speaks, hashtag Truth Over Fame, hashtag Grace and Silence. Clips from the interview spread like wildfire, stitched into reaction videos and quoted on morning talk shows. The internet had chosen its side, and this time it wasn't chasing scandal, it was celebrating strength. Hollywood took notice. Fellow actors posted messages of quiet solidarity. This is what dignity looks like. Journalists called it the end of the celebrity fairy tale. Opinion writers dissected every line, some calling her courageous, others accusing her of calculated timing. But even among the skeptics, there was no denying the shift. The narrative had moved from heartbreak to empowerment. Keith Urban, meanwhile, faced a very different spotlight. His first reaction was denial, a brief statement about respect and private matters, but the tone didn't land. Reporters noted his hesitation, the awkward deflections in interviews. His once charmed confidence seemed cracked. His songs suddenly reinterpreted through a harsher lens. The man who had once mastered public control now looked unsure of the script. While the world dissected him, Nicole quietly rebuilt. No public statements, no rebuttals, just presence. She was seen at charity galas, advocating for women's mental health, joining yoga retreats, producing art that explored resilience. Each appearance carried the quiet authority of someone who had stepped beyond the noise. The ripple effects reached far beyond Hollywood. Fans began re-evaluating their own relationships, sharing stories of emotional neglect and recovery. Podcasts, forums, and essays buzzed with one theme: you can walk away with outrage and still win. Nicole's calm had become contagious. But as the headlines swirled and the applause echoed, there was one thing the world didn't yet know. Nicole wasn't finished. Because her final message, the one she had saved for last, would turn personal pain into a global lesson. And when she delivered it, even her critics would have no choice but to listen. The story began with a question. Nicole, is it true? Now the truth is already answered. After divorce, Nicole Kidman didn't destroy anyone. She didn't lash out, didn't feed the spectacle. She rebuilt herself, quietly, powerfully, and that was the real exposure. the illusion wasn't shattered by scandal, it dissolved in the light of self-respect. Her journey wasn't about revenge, it was about rebirth. And in watching her rise, the world was reminded of something we often forget. Strength doesn't always roar. Sometimes it walks away with grace. So now the question turns to you. What illusions are you ready to release? What version of perfect are you finally brave enough to let go of? Because, in the end, Nicole's story isn't just hers. It's every person who's ever stayed silent until they found their voice. Every person who's ever chosen peace over proof. If you believe in truth without revenge, hit subscribe. Share this story to remind someone that silence can be power, and that sometimes the greatest clapback is simply rising above. The screen fades to black. City lights shimmer in the distance. A soft piano plays. Nicole walks away from the camera, free, calm, unstoppable.